programme, and we'll catch up with Caroline Holzbauer very shortly. But right now, travel advice from our travel expert, Eoghan Corry, and there's so many stories as regards airport delays, passport delays, and everything that is happening in the travel world. Good morning, Eoghan. How are you?
Good morning. The sun is shining, spring is springing, and travel is going into its usual chaotic state at this time of the year.
I'm glad to hear you say usual, because sometimes we forget these things are seasonal. They do tend to happen around this time of year, the airport delays, when everything gets back to full steam ahead and full schedules running.
We had a smell of it last August, Eimear, when the digital COVID cert got people moving in larger numbers, and Dublin Airport security queues ballooned. Now, the traditional security queue in Dublin Airport before COVID, would have been, if it went beyond 20 minutes, it was a crisis. And if it went beyond 30 minutes, the CEO was alerted. They were under pressure as well, because the Commission of Aviation Regulation had put in regulations as to the length of time that people should have to stand in a security queue. All of that went out the window. It was quite clear as early as last August, as I said, that things weren't going to work as smoothly post-COVID. We didn't expect them to be as bad as they were. What changed last week? The summer schedules. We've winter flight schedules are very, very minimal. They were much smaller than they would have been in the spring of 2020. And then last week and this week, extra flights come on board. Extra flights means extra passengers. The airport was clearly unable to cope over the weekend.
Okay, under pressure. They have the same staffing issues as everywhere else, I'm told, as well. But the other, I suppose, spanner in the works is it takes a long time to train airport staff and to get the proper maybe vetting and get them up and at it. It takes some time, doesn't it?
It was a confluence of things. As you say, a lot of people took redundancy packages out of Dublin Airport. Then you plan to ramp everything back up when the numbers start rising again. We're expecting the number of flights, the number of seats through Dublin Airport to be back to 90% of 2019 levels. But what changed also was the security clearance system on January the 1st. The traditional people who have been working airside, all their security passes all had to be renewed. It was basically a cleansing of the system to make sure that everything was working, and that put that system under pressure. When you're recruiting, as Dublin Airport said in a statement on Sunday, they've recruited 100 new people. They're still trying to get clearance through. The Gardaí have said they're behind the scenes. They negotiated that the Gardaí would put more priority on that. But I still think it takes about 6 weeks to get clearance. Security, there's no shortcuts there. If that's what security is for, the people doing security have to be cleared.
Right. Passengers, imagine being 3 hours early for a flight and missing your flight, Eoghan. This is really a cautionary tale for anyone thinking of travelling somewhere from Dublin Airport anytime soon. We have to be super early, don't we?
A bit of that, but things have improved since Sunday. It's at currently 15 minutes in Terminal 1 and 20 minutes in Terminal 2, the security queue. Now that in 2019 would have been as long as pretty much, it would have been a bad day, but on a quiet Wednesday morning to see them at that level doesn't augur very well for what's coming down the track. So we have 2.5 weeks to go to Easter. So what else has happened behind the scenes? The airlines have chipped in and said we're going to open a bit earlier. There was a problem that the airport was telling people to come 2 hours early for short-haul flights and 3 hours for long-haul. And a lot of people coming to face those security queues found that they couldn't check in their bags. They couldn't collect a boarding pass if they hadn't got one online, which, believe it or not, is still a thing. If you've got a passport, non-Irish passport, for instance, you can't just get it downloaded onto your phone. So all of those things that were adding to the problem they're working to solve them. Another move. Aer Lingus always had a facility for checking in your bags the night before, and they've been advertising and pushing that very strongly. If you've got a transatlantic flight, try and get your bags in the night before, bring your passport and boarding pass. So all of those. And there's another thing which passengers are contributing to. It's a long time. It's the first time for many years that some people have flown, and the lip balm at the bottom of the bag is showing up in a larger number of passengers than would be normal. The number of trays being taken by passengers is slightly higher than it would have been before. People just getting back into that. Nothing has changed on the security side, but with so many other things to think about, like location forms and making sure that all the family members' passports are in date, and the extra documentation that you need. People going through security, there's a higher proportion of them leaving liquids and laptops in the bag. A lot of the people who missed flights had a secondary inspection, which means that your bag goes off in one direction and you have to wait for the security people to go through it.
Okay, the passport delays is an issue that people are telling us about, even when they're renewing now. It seems there is a backlog. We heard the Minister, Simon Coveney, mentioning this recently as well. Huge, extraordinary backlog, because everyone's probably thinking of doing the same thing, Eoghan.
It's the same problem. We didn't need it. A lot of people didn't need it, and when they go looking, they discover it's out of date. There is a facility for emergency facility, but it's still a 2-week process. And the emergency facility, if you've already applied for your passport and you're awaiting your documents back, the emergency facility is not open to you. That's something that they could look at changing. The problem, renewing a passport is a much simpler business than it used to be. It's done online, and that part of the machinery seems to be working fairly well. But where things like newborn babies, the reason the Irish passport is so valuable, is one of the most valuable in the world, is we are very vigilant about who we give it to. So people applying for a first Irish passport, or newborn babies, you don't have to wait for your tax number for to apply. Do apply as soon as the baby is born, and right. it can come through fairly quickly, but some people have been waiting 2 or 3 months. They have deployed extra resources, but the reality is that the wave of passport applications that's landed, the pent-up wave, because they weren't being applied for through last year, weren't being distributed through the year.
All lastminute.com, I'd say.
A bit of that, yeah, absolutely.
Looking around wondering, is that passport in date? It's been so long since people have travelled. Finally, Eoghan... And
a child's passport, Eimear, is now 5 years, not 3 years, so that's helpful as well, yeah.
That is helpful, good to know that. Plenty of people asking questions about specifics on restrictions, again, just to...
Absolutely, let's go. Yeah, they're changing all the time. Yeah, South Africa removed the restriction for a test, a PCR test that disappeared on us last Wednesday. That was good news. Canada is going on April the 1st. We don't know what's happening with America, and what tends to happen is that it comes very quickly when it does. You get an overnight announcement, but what I'm hearing is April the 17th, America will remove the requirement for an antigen test. But do keep an eye out for that. Don't assume that. But Canada is going April the 1st. Most of Europe, by the way, just because we've abolished our locator form, it doesn't mean that anybody else has. Most countries still require it. The main countries we go to are Spain and Portugal. They both still require it. So no test required if you've got the vaccination, and make sure your third vaccination is on your digital COVID cert. People would have got the email with the new QR code for that. But locator form still required. After that, not that complicated. Once you have your locator form, it supersedes the digital COVID cert. It generates a QR code of its own. You will be asked for it at the boarding gate. People go through airports and say, I was never asked for it when I landed. But the way most governments operate is they put the onus on the airlines, not letting anyone get on board without the locator form filled out. And that's pretty important. It's only on your phone. You don't need to have it printed up. But once you have it, you're away. And don't forget the visa requirements, ordinary visa requirements. As I say, non-Irish passport holders still require the visas for Schengen that we still required. I've seen a couple of denied boardings in my own travels with people who've got all the paperwork right and then discovered something missing on the visa side.
Right. A final one, the Netherlands. A few listeners asking about, is the situation the same as described there for instance, Spain, where you don't need a PCR, you do need a locator form?
Locator form is what you need. Belgium, Netherlands, there's a common locator form for France, Italy, Slovenia and Malta. And something really important here I've just thought of. If you Google locator form, Italy, the first people that show up in you are not the government site. They're people who pay. They're the people who pay Google an amount to finish higher up in the page than the government site. And I have come across lots of people who have filled out the locator form and been asked to take out their Visa card and pay €55 for a locator form to go to Italy. The locator form is free. These are scammers.
Okay, so beware. You always give the best advice. Thank you very much.
Eimear, always a great pleasure. Camilla Margaret.
I'm sure you're off somewhere nice, are you?
I'm coming back from beautiful Cavan. Just like come back from the Irish Hotel Federation conference this morning, and the big issue there was the bed nights they lost. They lost 10 million bed nights in 2020 and 9 million last year, and 900,000 the first 2 months of the year. So Irish hotels struggling back, but they've come through a horrendous time, and I won't even go into the price of the scones in Cashel Palace because that provided a useful diversion. Tomorrow will be Brussels. It will be Michael O'Leary and the CEOs of the 4 major other airlines. So I'd probably get shouted at a bit at that, but that's what you deal with when you're writing about Ryanair.
I hope you got a night in the lovely Farnham estate in County Cavan. There's some nice spots up there.
It's some beautiful spots there. It's a great county, and it's a county that comes in at a price without the price premium that the Wild Atlantic Way does. Really worth it, and terrific fishing. Sleeve Russell was the hotel I was in, the famous PGA golf course there. It's an amazing place where you drive this small little bog road round the corner and you're looking at the Taj Mahal. It's still it's there for a while now. It's there 30 years, but it never ceases to make my jaw drop when I turn around that corner after the tractor with the silage spreader, in front of me, and then you see the Taj Mahal behind it. It's fantastic.
It's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Always a great pleasure, Eimear. Go Míle Mágat.
Slán Lat, and on